We have no 15-minute city plans. They were challenged to name a single one. I know of no such plans, and there are certainly none here in Stockport.
Hello you, and thanks for joining us at Stockport Council Watch. Now here at Stockport Council Watch there's not just me, there are a dedicated group who believe that the elected councillors are not working in the best interests of you, the good honest people of Stockport. Now you might not know this, but there is a war to take away your freedoms, and Stockport Council are leading the charge on behalf of global billionaires who want all the things for themselves as you struggle to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. Now the councillors are just useful idiots in the eyes of these so-called elites because they have been brainwashed to believe that they're doing the right thing. Now all it has taken is just a 7-hour carbon literacy training pack and constant repetition on the mainstream news, and yes, that's the mainstream news that we know lies to us all the time. Let me give you an example. They have just told us that we've had a hottest May on record. If you missed that, just do a Google search and you'll find out. They know they're lying to us, we know that they're lying to us, and they know that we know they're lying to us. So all it's taken is those few things for the councillors to believe that they're doing the right thing. And because they think they're doing the right thing, they think it makes it okay for them to lie to the public and to nudge you and your behaviours in a way that reduces your freedom and takes money out of your pocket. And if those nudges don't work, then they will use, and I quote, frankly more draconian things to force you to change your behaviour. Now if you don't believe me, then just watch this video now.
The public are now beginning to realise that the war on carbon dioxide is an attack on their freedoms and travel rights. When they see 15-minute cities and their restricted travel zones locally, I will not be a lone voice in this gallery demanding answers from the councils who allow this to happen.
We have no 15-minute city plans. They were challenged to name a single one. I know of no such plans, and there are certainly none here in Stockport.
The planning system is very clear. We should firstly cater for walking and cycling as a start before we start to consider other matters.
Our officers have mentioned that car parking should not be central to any developments or residential developments, so it should be hidden.
You know, we kind of have this, cultural thing where we're kind of stuck in our cars, but we feel like cars are freedom. The absence of cars in town centres is freedom, and I just wonder, will that change in the infrastructure, will that sort of nudge people out of their cars, or will we need to think about some other frankly more draconian things,
Okay, so now you might be asking, what is a 15-minute city? Well, I'll leave you to do your own research on that, but I'll warn you, if you don't want to be called a conspiracy theorist, then don't bother. Just hit the unsubscribe button and bury your head in the sand.
Climate change deniers. Climate change deniers.
Conspiracy-based inaccurate content. More likely to agree with me than you. Someone claiming the earth is flat. Conspiracy theories are banded around as true.
However, if you're concerned, I will leave links to Stockport Town Centre's residential design guide in the description below, and I'll leave the link to the full meeting which happened back in February, because what they're planning is a 15-minute city, but they're just not using those words. If you only take one thing away from this video, then consider this. Stockport councillors are willing to look at more draconian measures.
Will we need to think about some other, frankly more draconian things
to get you to do what they want. And bear in mind what draconian actually means. It means excessively harsh and severe. So just ponder that for a while. It might just be about getting you out of your cars now, but what could it mean in the future? What excessively harsh measures would they be willing to take against you in the future? Did you elect them to do that? Remember, All this is predicated on the idea of man-made climate change, that carbon dioxide, CO2, is causing global warming. So before I let you go, let me ask you just one question. What percentage of carbon dioxide is there in the atmosphere? Any guesses? Well, I'll tell you, the answer is 0.04%, okay? 400 parts per million. Of that, we humans produce about 4%, the rest naturally occurs through the carbon cycle. Without carbon dioxide, all plant life on Earth would die, which means we would die too. Okay, I'll leave you for now, but we're going to keep you updated on this and other matters, so be sure to subscribe down below and hit that little bell so you won't miss another video as and when they come, because we're going to be doing lots more of these videos. We're getting active now, and for the councillors that are watching, okay, we're keeping an eye on you, okay? We want you to work in our best interest, and if you don't work in our best interest, then we're going to continue to do these videos, and we're going to show the people of Stockport what you're doing, because they've not got time to look through all the videos of your meeting, but we at Stockport Council Watch have got a dedicated group of people who will.
Now, are you in favour of town planning that ensures your work, your shops, your education needs, your healthcare and leisure are all within a 15-minute walk or cycle ride of your home? On the one hand, the idea sounds benign, but in British cities including Bath, Canterbury, Edinburgh and Oxford, the very idea is being actively challenged by protesters who fear the thin end of a dystopian, totalitarian socialist wedge designed only to strip them of their traditional freedom. I'm joined now by Alan Miller from the Together Declaration, and shortly also by Nathan Albach, an urbanologist from Philadelphia. Alan, thanks for coming in. What exactly is proposed or being pushed in Oxford and the other cities?
So in Oxford, we've had a number of different things. So they keep calling them trials. So we've had low-traffic neighbourhoods they said were trials, even though 65% of people who responded to the consultation said they did not want them. Then you've had a proposal for bus gates. And bus gates, when they've put the proposal, without getting too complex, for the traffic plan for Oxfordshire County Council they intertwine that with the idea of a 20-minute neighbourhood. But basically, the bus gates mean you can have 70 passes to drive if you're local, 100 passes a year. But if you're not, you can't, and there's a ring road you have to go around. Slightly different in Bath, where you have a ring of steel, they call it, very lovely name, and you have low-traffic neighbourhoods as well. And we've seen in other places, like in London, where Ealing, where they've got rid of low-traffic neighbourhoods because residents have challenged it, you still have a discussion about a 20-minute neighbourhood, and we might have some of these road closures as well. So basically, they're a top-down imposition using the idea this would be a lovely livable street, active travel. It's all about people-friendly oriented, but actually what it means is it's an attack on cars and our freedom of movement and independence.
That is what it feels like, because what I'm suspicious about is the fact that a coercive element is there first. You know, that whatever big flower boxes blocking roads, talk of fines for people that use their car on the wrong sort of journey too many times in the year. You'd have thought if it was a naturally utopian, good for the people initiative, people would just naturally incline towards it without having to be pushed.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things is as well that we've seen in Oxfordshire with the County Council, we've seen that in the consultation, they had a report and a survey done beforehand, but they suppressed it according to Freedom of Information revelations that were in the Times this week and the Oxford Mail until after the consultation ended, because apparently the councillors didn't want people to see what this would mean, would contradict their very own study. A bit like what's happened with Sadiq Khan, it sounds like, with the ULEZ situation. And our point together is that why we say free our streets but also take back democracy is that the public should be at the heart of town and city planning, urban planning. What we need in terms of travel, dynamic trade, infrastructure, housing. You know, what happened to local authorities, the idea they would provide decent services? But also, it's not just local authorities, it's central government have been underwriting this and funding it, which is why we've been campaigning, saying to Mark Harper and the Department for Transport, you need to cut this umbilical cord now, because this underwriting of road closures, undemocratically imposed, is damaging businesses. They're being forced to close down. We've seen it on the Cowley Road in Oxford. We've seen it on Middleton Road, 100 years of trade in Middleton Road, shops having to close. We've seen that in a number of areas across the UK now. And also residents, all types of residents, not what they say, which is conspiracists and far right, but a whole different demographic, diverse, multi-generational, all being impacted in a negative way. And I think that what's going to happen, Neil, is like we've seen in Littlemore and a ward in Oxford, that many more people are going to be standing independently, going to be challenging. Labour won it by a tiny clinch, by 100 votes. They brought out all the guns, lots of people to canvass, but that was a 3 or 4 week campaign that people stood independently. And as these low traffic neighbourhood impositions, and as these 15-minute and 20-minute neighbourhoods that are basically a technocrat's idea of what we should do, the great unwashed, how we should travel and not travel, without providing any better provision in any way, we're going to see much more of a fight back, and we're actually supporting people locally, nationally, to do that, alongside launching our cabinet.
Bear with me, I've also got Nathan Albach, an urbanologist from Philadelphia, on the line. Nathan, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks for having me, Neil.
Good. No, pleasure to see you. Nathan, do you recognise the version of, let's say, 15-minute cities as described by Alan? And are you sympathetic towards the controversies that they have already had form around them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of the problems of distrust that are arising around the concept of 15-minute cities, particularly around Oxford, have to do with the fact that they came from a top-down level. And I think the policies themselves weren't prescribed transparently or coherently to the public. And I think that's where a lot of these problems come in. And the fact is that all around the world, including parts of the US, Europe, Australia, all over the place, these ideas around new urbanism, this whole concept of building more walkable places that aren't necessarily centered around cars, these ideas have been popularizing. And with that, obviously, governments are finding, ways to kind of meet people where they are in their cities. But I think to be successful in implementing these policies, you have to also work with the residents of an area. And if you don't do that in a transparent way, it's no surprise there's going to be protests.
I suppose the $64,000 question for me, Nathan, is why is it already coercive? What we are seeing here, what Alan's describing, is rather than put in all of these facilities, make sure everyone's got this idyllic world within a 15-minute walk of their home with all of the stuff of life readily accessible. It starts with talk of fines for driving your car too many times in a year and roads being blocked off. Is it for the betterment of people's lives, or is it just to get cars off the road?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to defend the policies around Oxford, because I agree with you in the sense that they weren't really implemented with residents' best interests in mind. I think there's cities all around the world, including parts of the Netherlands, states in the U.S., particularly cities like Portland, parts of Australia like Melbourne, Barcelona has implemented their Superblocks program in recent years. All of these different places have done this from the bottom up in ways where they trial different street designs that include more complete street elements, where they carve out protected bike lanes, they carve out bus lanes, they create raised crosswalks and protected sidewalks, and all these different things that kind of like organically build out from starting in city centers that are already highly pedestrianized, and they kind of organically build out from there. And I think that's where, again, this problem from top-down control coming from Oxford, it's facing these issues at a protest level, because people, they don't feel like they were part of that discussion. I don't necessarily know the intent of the government officials locally. Like maybe they had seen some kind of case study and thought this was going to be the best move for them, but clearly, as we're seeing with the backlash, it's having the opposite effect.
Nathan Albach, urbanologist from Philadelphia. I'm pushed for time tonight, but thank you so much for your contribution so far, and I'm sure it's a story that we can pick up again in weeks to come. Thanks for just now.
Thanks for having me, Neil.
Thank you. Since we've mentioned Oxfordshire County Council, I should go to a statement here. A spokesperson said, "We would like to reassure people that Oxfordshire County Council's transport policies are not designed to confine people to their local area. Our transport plans in Oxford are intended to address the city's traffic problems and create an environment where it's safer and easier for people to walk and cycle, and where public transport is more than reliable. We need a more sustainable, reliable and inclusive transport system that works for everyone. Policies are debated and decided by Oxfordshire elected councillors using local insight and information." Sounds lovely, Jacob. Do you buy it? Do you think they really do care about the people, or are they just using a velvet glove to slip in the iron hand of control?
Well, there's kind of a reason why these policies go hand in hand with the same kind of policies advocated by environmentalists. It's not just because they want to kind of reduce car use and reduce fossil fuels going into the atmosphere or something like that. It's because they share with lots of environmentalists a culture of low expectations around human beings. They think that, in the same way as environmentalists think lots of producing of consumer goods is kind of bad because more is kind of worse, similarly, they think lots of travel, lots of going to different places. You should be happy with one pub in your local area. The fact that you like the one kind of a 20-minute drive over is bad. Your viewers will be very familiar with that WEF slogan, "You'll kind of own nothing and you'll be happy," which in a way is just a rationalisation of economic distress, the fact that we can't produce enough goods to satisfy people's needs. This is like you'll go nowhere and you'll be happy.
A low expectation of humanity. Do you think that underscores...
Yeah. I think this goes back to your monologue, actually, that the people who are in charge basically don't trust the electorate, whether it's nationally or locally. There's this kind of sense of distrust that, you know, democracy doesn't work, and if you do things from the bottom up organically, then you'll end up with something, you know, terrible that's bad for the environment. And I think that whilst all lovely everything that we heard from your other guest there, it reminds me of the sort of like experimental architecture of sort of, I would say, totalitarian architects like Corbusier. But I think this is actually part of something much bigger in the zeitgeist, that is this kind of this attack on all of the things that has made modernity possible, all of the things that make our modern lives convenient, that keep us all healthy and free. I think that it's part of this overall phenomenon that includes a lot of the environmentalist policies. It includes a lot of this sort of attitude from those who do have positions of authority in local or national government that makes them feel that they actually have the right. Because my first thought with these 15-minute cities is that who gave you the right? You have no right to do this, to limit the way that people can move around their city.
That is the question, isn't it, Alan? My wife says to me all the time when we talk about these things is, where do these people get the idea that this is up to them?
Yeah.
Who do they think they are?
Well, maybe they think they're feudalists, where you get charged tolls to go from one hamlet to another, because the idea of free movement in the modern environment is now scorned upon in the way I agree with these comments. I think, you know, if you look at today's Times, for instance, it also shows how some of these consultations, they have to be seen for what they are. Dodgy data quite often, councillors and councils not wanting to respond, showing that they even on their own terms, they're not actually, they're disingenuous and they're dishonest. And we have such a low level of trust at the moment, which is a problem. For anyone who really wants to change things, we've got to believe that we can do it. I mean, it's a bit to this point. We've got to believe that humans are capable of doing things for betterment and improvement. We've got to have a bit of that ambition, that urban planning that's about dynamism, wealth creation for all. And at the moment, and I call them technocrats, and I think they're all very similar, the ones in central government and the local authorities. It's not just one or the other. They have this approach, which is we know best, we need to limit things, you'll be quiet and have things done to you, a bit like we've seen in the last 3 years. And frankly, people are not going to put up with it. And that's why Together, in the Together Declaration, we're saying get involved locally, regionally and nationally. We're campaigning, we're challenging. And people should be ready in May for the independent elections, for the local elections, but also in the coming year. And it's not just about elections, it's about reigniting a sense of the democratic kind of public and us being at the heart of things. And that's what we're determined to make sure happens in Britain, because we've seen too long now this contempt for the public and sidelining us.
Contempt for the public, that is what it feels like. Alan Miller, Together Declaration, thanks for coming in again. And you will certainly be invited in again to continue this debate.
Thank you.
I don't think it's going anywhere. It's not slowing down, it's speeding up.
We have no 15-minute city plans. They were challenged to name a single one. I know of no such plans, and there are certainly none here in Stockport.
The planning system is very clear. We should firstly cater for walking and cycling as a start before we start to consider other matters.
Our officers have mentioned that car parking should not be central to any developments or residential developments. So it should be hidden.
You know, we kind of have this, cultural thing where we're kind of stuck in our cars, but we feel like cars are freedom. The absence of cars in town centres is freedom. And I just wonder, will that change in the infrastructure, will that sort of nudge people out of their cars? Or will we need to think about some other, frankly, more draconian things?